The end of an era. Greenlaw has agreed to sign with the Denver Broncos.
What's up, Niner fans? Welcome to the Bay Area Beat. Today we're going to be diving into the dark last 2 days known as the Niners free agency. We'll also go down memory lane with some of my favorite guys like Greenlaw and Kyle Juszczyk. Today's pod is a little bit longer than usual, but we have a lot to get into. I'm going to be joined by my friend and fellow member of the faithful, Alex, who is surprisingly optimistic about where the Niners are headed. But without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Alex, to the Bay Area Beat.
Thanks, Garrett. Happy to be here. Excited to talk some Niners.
Yeah, man. Happy to have you on. So we're speaking of the Niners, we're 48 hours into free agency. How we feeling?
I mean, obviously it hurts to lose a lot of guys that we've been rooting for and have been a lot of fun to watch and massive contributors to this team over the past couple of years. But when you take the emotion out of it, I think, especially after the way that last season went, Niners need to get younger and they need to get cheaper. And I think everything that we saw over the past 48 hours is a reflection of that. I'm surprised that we weren't able to keep one of Talanoa Hufanga or Greenlaw. I think it makes a little bit of sense for some other reasons, but I thought we would be able to keep at least one of them, if not both. But I think, yeah, we're shedding some salary. We don't have a lot of cap space to work with, period. So what becomes incredibly imperative, if the Niners want to continue to be contenders over this upcoming season and the next couple of seasons, is you got to nail this draft.
Yeah.
Because we've got the one thing, we've got the quarterback position. I mean, obviously, you still have to work out his contract, but I'm confident it gets done before OTAs. You don't mess around with the quarterback contract the way they've done with, Ayuk, Debo, and Bosa in years past. I think it gets done before OTAs. And so we've got the quarterback position locked up, and it's continuing to, draft, develop, and hold on to the guys that you can at skill positions and in the trenches. So, yeah, I mean, definitely sucks to lose a lot of those guys. Dre, Huff, and Kyle Juszczyk. Just from like an emotional, attachment standpoint. But I think looking at it from the business angle, it makes sense. And it probably had to happen, sadly.
Yeah, bad podcasting by me. I should have started with who we've lost. So in 48 hours, Niners have lost Greenlaw, like you mentioned, both Greenlaw and Hufanga to the Broncos. Greenlaw signed a 3-year, $35 million deal, which I think the big hesitation was giving him that longer term deal. I think the Niners were comfortable probably paying him 10 to 12 million, the same amount he got from the Broncos, but I don't think they were comfortable given those last few years with his injury history,
Yep.
Coming off the Achilles in the Super Bowl, and then last year having the calf injury. So yeah, Dre goes to the Broncos for 3 years, $35 million, joined by Hufanga for 3 years, $45 million. I think one of the most obvious losses they were going to have was Charvarius Ward, who goes to the Colts. Big deal there.
He got 3 years. Back.
Yeah, $60 million. Understandably
Good
so.
For him.
It seemed like he was, with the loss of his daughter last year, it was only a matter of time. And
who can blame him for that, 100%, right? Like
100%.
he needed some fresh scenery. Like totally understandable.
No doubt. Few guys on the offensive line, guys that I think got paid a little more than I was expecting.
Aaron Banks, holy cow, 77 mil. I didn't see that coming.
Over 4 years to the Packers. And then another big surprise to me was Jalen Moore, who was
mind-blowing.
Trent Williams' backup, and got a 2-year, $30 million deal to be Patrick Mahomes' blind side in Kansas City. And I guess, Chiefs probably still rubbing it in with signing Elijah Mitchell for a small deal.
That hurt. I know we were never keeping Eli, but the Chiefs of all teams, come on.
Yeah, I know.
Come on. That was a little salt in the wound.
He has missed more games than he's played in his 4 years with the Niners, but when he plays,
he's electric.
Exactly. And I do think
5 yards a pop.
Yeah, no, 100%. He got a small deal, only 1 year, 3.5 kind of prove it deal.
Prove it. Yep.
Hopefully he can stay healthy in Kansas City. I mean, I think he has, Pacheco's good, but I think he has every much a right to win that backfield as anyone, if not just going running back by committee.
It's gonna hurt me if he has a ton of success in Kansas City.
Yeah,
Like that's not gonna be fun to watch. I mean, I'm not that I'm not rooting for him. Like I hope the best for him. He's an awesome guy and great player. But it will hurt me a little bit
if he
has a
stays
lot of
healthy,
success there.
I think he will. He is a
Which,
good
yeah,
runner, and
that's what it always comes down to with Eli.
but at the same time, they tendered Jordan Mason. Garendo showed some real signs last year, I think, of being a solid RB2, and even
I
extended
agree.
Patrick Taylor. So, and Shanahan can find a running back in any part of the draft, and I think out of
Or
any position,
pull a guy off the waiver wire and
absolutely
insert him in, and he's going for 110 and a touchdown on Sunday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A few of the releasings that I think were a little more surprising to me, anyone that's familiar with the Niners cap situation, people that not the national media who's making very big claims and creating this as such a shock, but people that have
Of course they are.
Yeah, right. I mean, you see everyone kind of memeing them, and Micah Parsons talking about someone who's never beat the Niners in the playoffs, making fun.
Nothing that he has to say about this has any credibility.
Right. But cutting Kyle Juszczyk, him and Kittle were the two longest tenured Niners. They're saving $3 million with the cut, but it's a $3.6 million dead cap hit, which hurts a little bit.
I heard somewhere that the Niners have something like the third most. I just looked at in terms of salary cap room on Sport Track. I think this is updated. It's showing that the Niners have 44 million total cap space, but we have something like the third most dead cap money, and that's all. A lot of it's coming from Debo. Somehow we're still paying Eric Armstead,
right,
and then Leonard Floyd as well, which I think was one of the more surprising releases to me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the one I wanted to get into was Leonard
Yep.
Floyd, because it makes sense if you are, making room for Joey Bosa. And I think, part of the reason I wanted to record today rather than Monday or Tuesday was because I was waiting for what I thought was going to be the big offseason signing for the Niners, which was pairing
So
him.
much for that.
Yeah, pairing him with his brother, having both Bosas on opposite ends of the D line, and
Would have been awesome.
Yeah, instead he goes to Buffalo for a 1 year, $12.5 million deal. Another guy who has an injury history, and I think probably the biggest reason why the Niners didn't want to go there with him and give him that $12 million was because of how injured the roster is, and
that's why even I was reluctant with Bosa. Like as cool as it would be to have both Bosa brothers on either end of the D line, I just with his injury history, I was a little bit reluctant. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have minded a 1 year like the deal he got in Buffalo, which is effectively a prove it deal.
right.
I wouldn't have minded that at all. I would have been more hesitant towards a long-term commitment, which makes me, I'm curious that could the Niners not match that offer? Like Miami would have made sense from a couple of standpoints, given, grew up in, I think they grew up in the Fort Lauderdale area, no state income tax. You've got some advantages there, but going to Buffalo is neither of those two things. So, I mean, I guess you're playing with Josh Allen, you're going to be a contender next year.
And I think that's part of it. He's hitting a certain point in his career where he's getting up there in age. He has a long injury history, and frankly, he might have seen on top of the Niners only paying, like, reportedly offering him less than $10 million a year. I think he probably saw both situations though, and saw that the Bills are far more primed to win right now, and it's a 1 year deal. He can always revisit this next year and see if he wants to still play with his brother before he retires. But I wanted Bosa. I know he has an injury history, but I do, and maybe it's just the idea of like you said, having two brothers playing together on both ends of the D line would be cool to see. But when he's right, he is still a top 20 defensive end, top 15 defensive end in the league. And I think the Niners right now have the worst D line that they've had in the Kyle Shanahan era. And it doesn't make sense to me to cut Leonard Floyd unless you're going to replace him with a guy with at least the same caliber as Leonard Floyd.
I mean, if you look at the D line room as it stands right now, it is Nick Bosa, Yetur Gross-Matos up the middle, and then I think Kevin Givens. And if I'm not mistaken, excluding maybe P squad guys, like that's it.
Yeah, they release Hargrave. Yeah, they release Malik
Yep.
Collins.
Yep.
And I understand that a lot of this is shaping up for the Brock Purdy contract, the big probably $40 to $50 million extension. But
we think it's only that.
I mean, Josh Allen got $55 million extension to
55 a year.
55 a year, and
Yeah.
if the Niners that I think should kind of set the. Sam Darnold got $33 million a year. I think, as much as I like Purdy, I think he's a lot closer to Sam Darnold than he is Josh
absolutely.
Allen.
Absolutely. I think most people would agree.
Yeah, so split the difference there. I think they're looking at a $40 to $45 million deal, and I want to get into Purdy in a little bit.
Yep.
Want to finish wrapping up the guys who we lost.
Sure.
Other notable names. Deebo Samuel was last week, traded to the Commanders.
We all saw that coming.
Saw that coming probably as soon as Ayuk signed his big deal and drafted Pearsall in the
as
same
soon as I think
year.
Even before that, as soon as they drafted Pearsall, which makes it all the more confusing why they would restructure his deal. And I think it was November of last year that increased his dead cap hit.
Right.
And, people started thinking, oh, maybe they keep him past this year, because I think it was assumed once Pearsall signed and they extended Ayuk that Deebo was playing his last year with the Niners. We all knew that going in. And but then you restructure his deal and take on a greater cap hit. There might be some salary cap machinations going on that I don't totally understand. But on the surface level, doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, just for a little added context, the Niners are absorbing a $32 million cap hit this year to trade Deebo Samuel for a 5th round pick. They are gonna get some of that money back next year, and I think next year is kind of where they're gearing up, because that's the first year of the Brock Purdy deal. But it's certainly a tough pill to swallow that you are giving up a diminished version, but a guy who's been a 2-time Pro Bowler and taking on $32 million away from your available salary cap.
If I remember correctly, before the restructure, I think it was going to be closer to like a $16 million cap hit.
Yep.
So I mean, that's doubling that money that you absorb, which is interesting. But again, I think it's all setting up for next year when the Brock extension kicks in.
Mm-hmm. So in total, the Niners have lost 9 starters from last year. They now only have 11 of their 22 starters from the Super Bowl 13 months ago on roster, and only 3 from the 2020 Super Bowl, and Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Nick Bosa. So we're going to be looking at a very different team next year. I think that's pretty obvious. Any of these moves surprise you, whether it's the size of the contract that they got or just in general that we ended up not being able to retain them?
I mean, I think obviously, people are going to make a big deal about the number of starters that we lost and the amount of money that they were getting on the open market. I think outside of Dre and Hufanga, because I thought we were going to be able to keep at least one of them. Losing Mooney and Aaron Banks, we were never going to be able to keep. Again, Jalen Moore, I'm not sure what the Chiefs see that we didn't see to give him a contract to be, to protect Patrick Mahomes' blind side. But so all that a little surprising. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's tough losing a lot of guys that were part of those Super Bowl teams. The reality of it is the Niners went 6-10 last year. Mm-hmm. And running it back with the same crew probably wasn't in anybody's best interest. And, Jed York's seeing all this, and he's probably not super inclined to hand out more, big money contracts to not old, but older players, and would rather, build through the draft. And that is the key to sustainability in the NFL, is building through the draft. And we saw pretty good early returns on a lot of last year's draft class, which is encouraging. And, in order for the Niners to continue to be contenders once Brock's contract kicks in, those guys need to keep developing. They need to hit on a lot of this year's draft class and probably next year's too. You look at any team in the NFL that has had sustained success while carrying on a massive quarterback contract, look at the Chiefs and Eagles' recent drafts. And there's your answer.
Yeah, they need to nail the draft, even if they get start 2 to 3 starters out of that draft. They have 11 picks, which is great.
Still rookies.
Still rookies, exactly. Still a lot of 22-year-olds to expect to
Yep.
replace 9 starters. I think for me, a lot of them, just speaking about contracts in general, felt like a little bit of overpays, particularly Aaron Banks and Jalen
Yep.
Moore. I will say Jalen Moore played well when Trent Williams was out the last 5 games of last season. I think he had an above average run blocking grade according to PFF. It's also funny to think that, like, Niners fans, including myself, were complaining all season about the offensive line and the
Yep.
issues that they had. And now 2 guys that Aaron Banks got the biggest contract of any guard in free agency, and Jalen Moore is now the Chiefs see him as a reasonable. They traded Joe Tooney and are moving Jalen Moore to left tackle to be Mahomes' blind spot. So I think for me, the Greenlaw was the one that I did expect to come back, like you said. Even Hufanga at a certain point seemed like what he was generating in the open market, $15 million a year for a safety, when they have Mustafa. Is that the
Mustafa.
guy? And Mustafa.
Yep.
And even Jair Brown, I thought played pretty well last year. So losing him, I kind of understood. But Dre Greenlaw, and want to give a shout out to him. I'll always remember.
Oh yeah.
What was it? 2019 last
20,
game of the
2019 on the
season,
goal line.
with
Yep.
Jacob Hollister stopping him at the 1-inch
the
yard
1 seed.
line to win the 1 seed, or win the division, get the 1 seed, ended
Yep.
up propelling them to that Super Bowl appearance, which I don't want to discuss any further.
In that moment, I thought that was the start of the Super Bowl DVD.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, if we win that, if we win that game, obviously, ifs, ands, buts, the Super Bowl DVD starts with that play, and that was going to go down. I mean, it still is an iconic play, but if we go on to win that Super Bowl, I don't think it's a crazy stretch to say that's up there with the catch, maybe a top 5 most important play in Niner history.
I think that's the best, or my favorite regular season game in Niner history, at least in recent memory. Particularly for me, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was like 2 days before New Year's. I had all my college buddies in town who are all Seahawks fans. We were watching it with obviously as much as you can have on the line for a regular season game. And they were at the 1 yard, 1st and 1. If you remember, Pete Carroll gets the false start.
They get the delay a game. It was the false starter delay game trying to get Marshawn into the game. I watched that entire drive with my hands over my eyes, because I was like, it's Russell Wilson with, a drive to win the 2-minute drill to win the game. I've seen this movie before and I know how it ends.
Yeah.
And turns out I was wrong.
Well, we saw the other coin where
we saw the alternate ending.
The 2015 Super Bowl against the Pats, but this time, with the delay of game from Pete Carroll, he's probably thinking, I can't pass it on the 1 again. Let's get Marshawn in there to not kind of redo 2015, and obviously ended up biting him in the ass. So yeah, Greenlaw, I think, is also just amongst the fan base. Would you say he's the one that's going to hurt the most to you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's him and Kyle Juszczyk was the longest tenured Niner. He had been through the full rebuild starting in 2017. And then I think Dre Greenlaw was a lot of, Fred provides a lot of the juice too, but Dre Greenlaw really is the emotional leader of that defense, and just the ferocity with which he played, the ferocity and passion with which he played the game was just so infectious and got you so fired up every time he made a play as a fan. And he is, there's no doubt in anybody's mind, he is giving 100% on every single play. And that's a guy that, is easy to root for, easy to get attached to. And the rumblings that I've heard from people online who seem to be in the know was that Dre might not ever have been coming back, that he wanted to be the guy in his own defense, and run the defense, really be the star of a defense, which he has, absolutely the skill and the acumen to do. And he was never going to do that playing alongside Fred Warner. And apparently he told all the guys in Cabo like a month ago that he wasn't coming back.
Oh, interesting.
His decision was made. That is nothing official, but rumblings. Is of what I'm hearing, in which that case makes it a little bit easier to swallow. Still hurts, and then similarly with Juice, what it sounds like more of a shift in offensive philosophy away from 21 personnel, more 12 personnel to help us beating man coverage, which was where defenses really had the upper hand on the Niners for most of last year. And then bringing in Luke Farrell was his name, right? Had the best pass blocking grade. And I'm not a huge fan of PFF personally, but I think they can be kind of hit or miss. But as a reference point, I think had the best pass blocking grade of any tight end, or one of the best of any tight end in the league last year. Again, not a huge pass catcher, but a guy who's really valuable blocking. And I think something the Niners underratedly missed, losing Charlie Warner ahead of last season. So I think there's some shifts in direction. When you start to understand it, make it maybe a little bit easier to swallow, but still hurts. Both those guys.
Yeah. Juszczyk he played with the Niners for 8 years, 8-time Pro Bowler. He is a fullback. There's not as much competition there, and he played 2 of his best playoff games of his career in both Super Bowls. I remember in 2020 he had the 3 catches for 40
scored
yards and a touchdown. Yeah, even 2024 2 catches for 31 yards as a fullback. Yeah. The way I justify it to myself is, although he was only a $3 million cap hit, the Niners weren't really in a position with their cap situation to be paying a premium at fullback.
Nope.
And I think, like you said, with Luke Farrell, they're moving, switching personnel, probably going to have 2 tight ends on the field, 1 running back, with that mostly being CMC. And yeah, the thing about PFF is I think I use it when it's benefiting us. So when it says Luke Farrell's the top pass blocker amongst any tight ends, I'll use that. But when it also says that he's never had a touchdown catch in 4 years and has 350
let's ignore all
yards.
his pass catching metrics. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if there's anything else to really say about the losses. Greenlaw, we'll certainly miss Greenlaw and Juszczyk the most. I'll miss the Juice chance. Iconic Levi Stadium chance. So you want to get into the couple free agent signings that they made. So Luke Farrell, we kind of talked about a little bit. Demarcus Robinson, 2-year, $9.5 million deal coming from the Rams to what I think be the Ayuk replacement, at least the first half of the season, while Ayuk probably starts on the PUP list. Funny thing about that is, not funny, but he did have a DUI and may miss 1 to 2 games. So
kind of weird that you sign him to be the early season little bit of a fill-in for BA when there's a potential pending suspension. Just again, question marks. I mean, there might not have been anyone else on the market, but yeah, that's at the best question marks.
Yeah. I mean, there is still older guys, but Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, like I don't think they're going to be making more than $10 million a year. Granted, DeMarcus is only $5 million a year. Probably will start week 1 in 11 personnel. I assume it's going to be Pearsall in the slot, and then him and Juwan out wide. Which is great. Pearsall is a natural slot receiver, so I think it kind of bodes well with at least.
He played a little bit out wide too at Florida, didn't he?
He did in his 2 games at the end of the season last year, though, when he really kind of came onto the scene.
He was playing out of the slot because we had Juwan in the X. Yeah,
exactly. Also, DeMarcus, I think, was one of the best. He ranked. I saw this last night when I was kind of scrolling through Twitter. He ranked
one of the best in separation, right?
Yeah, top 20 in each of the last 3 years, which is, like you mentioned at the start of the podcast, exactly what the Niners are looking to build around Brock Purdy.
BA was the separation receiver, which is why he and Brock had such great chemistry, because Brock, the one knock on him is he can struggle against tight man coverage, and BA was the guy who could beat man coverage routinely. And then with a condensed off season, when he came back, he wasn't performing to his own standards and the team standards. And then obviously, you lose him for the year. And then between the guys that we had, you didn't really have a true separation receiver. So hopefully that's that's a role that Robinson can fill, pending potential legal issues.
Yeah. And he, Brock Purdy was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL the last couple of years against man coverage, and that's where he really thrives, like you said, with separation. So I think he's a great fit at a very low cost. He's making $5 million this year. It's $6 million guaranteed, so the Niners could cut him next year. I don't see them doing that, but if they needed to shed more salary, it's a pretty easy cut next year. It's more of a 1-year deal. Few other points I just wanted to make on Luke Farrell. So funny enough, he is the highest paid free agent tight end in Niners history. Obviously, not including guys that they're re-signing like George Kittle or Vernon Davis. It's a 3-year, $20 million deal with $11 million guaranteed. So it's really more of like a 2-year, $11 million deal. I think what I saw was without, with us not really signing anyone else and paying on paper, or what, agents like to say when the news breaks, a $7 million annual deal for a blocking tight end was kind of a sticker shock to me, but it's really more of a 2-year, $11 million deal. The Niners can get out of it after 2 years. And like you said, it's really a sign that they're moving a lot more 12 personnel rather than the 21 personnel they use with Juice. And it's going to help George Kittle get free in the pass game. He probably,
I was going to say,
is the best pass catcher or is Brock Purdy's favorite weapon now that Debo's out of town and Ayuk's injured, and get it, as great of a blocker as Kittle is, getting him more opportunities in space, I think, is exactly what this team is looking for.
Something that Niners fans have been clamoring for, it feels like, the past 2, if not 3 seasons. The problem is he's so valuable as as a run blocker and a pass blocker, that a lot of times that's where they needed to use him. So there's been talk for years about the Niners trying to find a pass catching complement to Kittle as a tight end, but I think it might be almost just as valuable to find a blocking tight end who can let Kittle loose and let him use his let us utilize his pass catching abilities and route running abilities to open up the offense a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Kittle. I mean, hopefully he's in line for
needs to retire a Niner.
Yeah, new deal soon.
Has to be.
I think he would. Him, Fred Warner, Bosa. I think these are the guys that they're building around and kind of just filling complementary pieces around them. Last few free agents I wanted to talk about. I frankly had to look most of them up because I hadn't heard about them.
That's fair. Fair.
They signed cornerback Jason Pinnock from the Giants, cornerback Trey Brown from the Seahawks, Trey Tomlinson.
Saw that this morning.
Yeah, from the Rams as a waiver, and then safety Richie Grant from the Falcons and linebacker Luke Gifford, who are both kind of considered special team studs. And if that's really what their main role is,
it's always valuable.
Especially the last 2 years when the Niners have been one of the worst special teams units in the NFL. And
I would say George Odom was exactly that role, fill-in safety and ace special teamer. Great gunner, great on kickoff return. I mean, I know the overall unit suffered last year. I think last year in 2021, especially when we were close to dead last in the league, only team worse than us was the Packers, and ironically that game was turned on a special teams miscue for the Packers. Those special teams guys are always going to be valuable.
I think on top of the Niners being so inactive in free agency, I think the Rams getting Devontae, the Seahawks, completely overhauling and switching out Sam Darnold or trading Geno and DK for Sam Darnold. I think they might kind of be going backwards. And the Cardinals signing Josh Sweat, I think, kind of adds to some of the angst I get.
But
go ahead.
Yeah. At the same time, let's be realistic. Like, I think, again, the national media loves to overblow how many guys, and it's big news, right? We lost a lot of starters who all got paid a lot of money to go elsewhere, and but when you look at every one of them one by one, we're not going to pay Aaron Banks $77 million. We have Dominic Punai right there, who was one of the standouts of a really strong, probably the standout of a really strong rookie class. I still have my doubts about Jair Brown, but you're not paying Hufanga that, as much as I love him, you're not paying Hufanga that kind of money with his injury history when you have, Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa still on rookie 2 starting safeties on rookie contracts. You look at, again, we talked about Mooney Ward, love him, and we'll root for him for the rest of his career. He wasn't ever coming back. And again, Jalen Moore, we weren't paying him that kind of money. I understand the frustration and with seemingly, a lot of, every other team in our division making big moves. But, one, we don't have the salary cap because we're already paying a lot of our top end talent. We don't necessarily need to go out or don't have the room to go out and get that same top end talent because a lot of it's already in house. And yeah, you're gonna, a lot of those guys that that we lost for big money just didn't make financial sense for the Niners to retain. So again, I understand the anger, but I think it can be a little bit misplaced.
Fair enough. I think it's a lot of you don't win games in the offseason. You might make improvements to your team, but there's a lot of irrational thinking around March, and a lot of the time it ends up biting team in the ass. I'd way rather be a little more frugal and not be stuck with a 4-year deal where it's taking 20% of your cap hit for a guy that's either not playing or not contributing.
The great news is, for all the irrationality and overreactions of free agency in March, it's only, it's going to get much more rational and level headed when we get to the draft in a month. That's when the most reasoned and sound, thoughtful takes are shared.
Oh, I love the winners and losers after the first
winners
round.
And losers after they haven't even played a snap, haven't even shown up for minicamp. Like, someone's got to do it, I guess, because
hey, it gets the clicks.
For some reason, I still click.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you think the Niners go from here? They have about 30, depending on where you see dead money. They're around $30 to $35 million left in salary cap. A few names I kind of hope they go potentially after on the defensive line is either a Zadarius Smith or a DeMarcus Lawrence. It might be a little too high price for the Niners. Anyone you kind of have your eye on?
How old is DeMarcus Lawrence?
Ooh, I think he's got to be in his early 30s.
I
Let's see.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
He's 32.
I mean, he might still have some juice in him. Zadarius Smith, I think, is around the same age. He had a really good season for Cleveland, I want to say, like a year or two ago. Was productive in Minnesota too. Again, don't know what kind of juice he has left. This one's incredibly selfish, and I don't even know if it probably doesn't make sense based on our roster needs. But if the Rams end up cutting Cooper Kupp, come on up north.
Oh man,
that would be awesome.
I think he's gonna, and I think he did just moments ago get cut. I got a notification about it, but I think he is going to have a very hot market. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
I think the DeMarcus
it's not going to happen. I'll say it right now. It's not going to happen. But I think he can still be really productive when he's healthy. He's going to have a little bit of a grudge after getting cut, and then the Rams cut him, try to get younger, and then go out and sign Devontae Adams.
Right.
Again, not that Devontae Adams isn't still an incredible player, but he's on the back
older
nine.
Player. Yeah,
older player, who's older than Kupp. So I think he's got, he's going to have a point to prove and come to a division rival. It would remind me a little bit, obviously without quite the same history, but Sherman coming to the Niners in 2019 would remind me, be a little bit reminiscent of that. Something that would just add, obviously add some juice to the rivalry.
Sure,
it'd be a lot of fun. So completely selfishly.
So we tease this a little bit, but what do you think this all means for Brock Purdy, and what do you think they do with his next contract? Is it an extension this year? They have obviously the leverage to let him play his last year out on his rookie deal, and even could franchise him next year if they really wanted to.
They could. I would think that the franchise or letting him play out his deal. I mean, where the Niners have the leverage is they know that, Brock and his agent absolutely do not. The last thing they want to do is play out this year without a new deal because of all of the risk that carries for your next deal. Unfortunately, something we saw with Ayuk this year or this past season.
I think that might just make the Niners a little more hesitant though to give him that deal when they really don't need to. I think the Ayuk was almost a wake up call to play hardball with these guys a little more, and I don't think it's a great idea.
Could we have played hardball with Ayuk any more than we did?
Well,
I mean, I have my criticisms on both on both ends. I think the Niners walking away from the negotiating table in May was stupid and nonsensical, and then Ayuk's melodrama and flip flopping. I don't think I'll ever look at him the same way. was really disappointing. It seemed like he and his camp didn't even know what they wanted. The inconsistency and flip-flopping made it, a uniquely frustrating situation to follow. Yeah, obviously, I hindsight is 2020 with that. Would the Niners have been better off trading him? I mean, you can't predict an injury, right? But you knew when you signed him that you weren't going to get him at his best because he didn't have an offseason. I think the Niners, I actually think they learned their lesson in the opposite way, in that, you get this deal done early. I think they get it done before OTAs. And I unfortunately I think it's going to be a number that most fans are going to be a little bit uncomfortable with, because Brock and his camp have the leverage that, like, look, I've been playing for pennies on the dollar for the past 3 years. I've been a Pro Bowl player, got you to a Super Bowl for nothing, and I deserve to be rewarded, for that. So I think part of it is, paying him what he's worth, but I think they're going to argue for a little more because of, the value that the compensation that he didn't get for being a top 10, top 15 quarterback in the league, So I think they get it done. I think because, you want that for all the instability in the rest of the roster right now. The one thing we can kind of hang our hat on, even though we don't actually have it, technically, is stability at the quarterback position. And that's completely paramount to the rest of the 53-man roster. You can't go through training camp without your starting quarterback. Like, I don't know if Brock would hold out. I actually think he would. You can't do that. You don't want to go through OTAs without your starting quarterback. I mean, you can, but you have to have them locked up for training camp. And I think they want to avoid a messy, melodramatic mess like they've had, contract dispute like they've had, each of the past 3 off seasons now?
Yeah. It was Debo 3 years ago. It was Bosa 2 years ago. And
Debo, Bosa, and Ayuk, and Trent Williams, if you want to throw that in. So for that reason, my prediction is I think they get it done before OTAs. I think it's a number that we're not totally comfortable with.
I'm going to make you give a little more. Is it over under 50 million a year?
I think like right on the ball. I'll say slightly over.
Okay, I'm going to go slightly under. I think it's
okay.
I think
I would love it.
Yeah,
I would love it to be slightly under. Yeah,
completely agree.
But again, I think it's going to be a number that we're uncomfortable with. And for the record, would love to be wrong. This is not a prediction where I want to be right, like not whatsoever. But for all the factors that I mentioned, I think that I think it's probably a little bit of an overpay.
Yeah, I hear you there. I want to close in a moment. The last kind of sentiment I want to bring into this is, as painful as some of these losses are, both as contributors on the team and fan favorites and Greenlaw and Juice and Hufanga. I think a lot of younger Niner fans don't remember 10 years ago in 2014, where in one off season we lost Harbaugh and Fangio as our coaches. We lost Patrick Willis, Aldon Smith, Justin Smith, Michael Crabtree, Frank Gore, Mike Upati, Chris Borland as a rookie, just to name a few, Anthony Davis. So it certainly can be worse.
I remember it was that bad. I remember Willis retiring. I don't know if I've ever been more shocked in any news. And then Chris Borland, who had an incredibly promising rookie campaign. Everyone thought that was going to start a trend, and it didn't.
No.
Which is funny to look back on. So I remember those two, and then obviously losing Harbaugh, losing Fangio. But I mean, people were running Fangio out of town. Or no, not Fangio, Greg Roman. Did we lose Greg Roman that year or the year before?
I think it was all the same regime when Harbaugh got let go. I think Fangio was willing to stay on if they didn't hire Jim Tomsula as their head coach. That's the last thing I want to say for Niner fans listening. It certainly can be worse. I don't know if you're a betting guy. I obviously work in the industry and take some of these odds to heart, but before free agency, the Niners were 15-1 to win the Super Bowl. They've now moved to 16-1 with all these losses. So, sportsbooks see these free agency losses as not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of where their odds are at. Going from 16-1 to 17-1 is a marginal difference. And they're still the third highest favorites to win the Super Bowl out of the NFC behind the Eagles and the Lions. So
Yep.
brighter days are ahead.
The talent's still there. It's not a talent purge like you described that 2014 off season. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
But there's, not nowhere close. We lost a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong, but we've still got a lot of talent on this roster and are hopefully going to infuse it with a lot more talent, younger and cheaper talent through this draft. So really interested to see what they do. And yeah, gonna be exciting. Got to nail this one.
Yeah, for real. Let's end it there. That's a great way of
Yep.
ending it. Go Niners. And let's do this again come draft time.
Yes, sir.
All right, good talking to you, Alex. Take care, man.
Likewise. Thank you. See you.
Now, if you made it to the end of the episode, I want to say thank you. I know it was a long one, but I hope you enjoyed. If you don't mind subscribing and maybe even dropping a like, you'll become my new best friend. I produce these Bay Area sports podcasts twice a week, and I'm looking to grow my audience as much as I can. You can find the audio version of the podcast on Spotify or Apple Pods at the Bay Area Beat, and on YouTube at Bay Area Beat. You can also find short clips on all socials under the same name. Thanks again for listening. Catch you all next week.